Hey guys, today's going to be a part two. There's been so much development on a module called Dungeon Draw that I'm going to walk you through all the recent changes because it's getting very, very powerful. I'm going to show you some basic things and some eye candy things like this, where you can actually create 3D um, things yourself, just drawing them and then rendering them in 3D using Ripper's 3D canvas. They now integrate together, these two modules. And then I'm going to show you some even crazier stuff where I show you how I built this dungeon with modular pieces. I'm going to walk you through building it, and then it's all glued together with Dungeon Draw. So these hallways and these walls and everything surrounding it, these custom floors, these are all components that were driven by Dungeon Draw to help me slap together what is a pretty impressive, I think, dungeon made on the fly that I have the ability to change and customize and move around considerably. So that's what today's about. I'm going to take you through all this stuff. Jump around to the timestamps if there's things that are more interesting to you. Play this on 1.5 times speed if you want to get through all the content but faster. And then let me know in the comments at the end what you think. Okay, so let's start with the basics before we get into the crazy stuff. First of all, in your module settings, you have two options. You can enable support for 3D Canvas if you think that you're going to use that. And then you can enable support for Snap to Grid. Now, I personally like this. It makes me make fewer mistakes if I've got Snap to Grid on. So if we jump in here, I've got this set to, I've got it set to cobblestone. So you're familiar with already the basics. Like if we wanted to make a room here, we could draw it this way. You'll see that this room snaps to, and actually snaps to half grid. So even if you're off by a little bit, it'll still snap you to a half grid or a full grid space. We'll draw a couple of rooms here just to give ourselves sort of a canvas to work with. Draw a bigger room. Maybe this room will do just an open drawing. This is really cool. So this is a freehand drawing tool. And you can see you can do it in any shape, which is going to be great for caves and things like that. But if we look at the walls, that's pretty decent. You could probably make those a little bit more efficient, but if you're not going to use this too terribly much, it's a great way to make little enclaves and other stuff that you might use later. And maybe we'll draw another thing off of here and just draw another square room. Keep it simple. Next thing I want to show you is you can now do interior walls. So if you click this tool and you decide that you want this room to be a little bit more bifurcated, I can make an interior wall here. Works great. I can make another wall. The doors work like they have before, and they'll draw right over top of the wall and make a door. If we go back to our wall tool, we can see that's how that works. And maybe we'll put another door in here. And I'm going to want to show you some door stuff here later. So I'll draw another couple of doors in certain spots. Should be good enough. You can also draw secret doors. And then you can remove walls and doors using this tool. It just creates a box. You can draw it around it and it'll delete all of them. Same type of thing with how the remove rectangles works. Okay, so now we've got our basics here. Now we want to talk about our theme painter. Oh, by the way, I didn't mention this, but with Snap to Grid, if you hold down Shift, then it won't snap to grid. So I'll just do like a weird room here. And so that drew it the way that that I had done it with without snapping to grid. So just keep that in mind. You can automatically do snap to grid, or you can turn it off in the settings. And if you have it on, you can turn it off just by holding Shift. All right, so let's look at Theme Painter because this is a big deal. Actually, let's jump in here first because there's some changes to the main config that you should know about. So you've got more fields here than you're used to seeing. You can now control, your shadows and your opacity. You can turn these all into a theme and use them later easily. My floor color I'll probably want to keep like that. In this case, I'm using the floor color that comes with the cobblestone theme. So that actually blow away any changes I made to it. So this ends up being the defaults for the cobblestone theme, for example. But some of the new things that are introduced are down here. So you have floor texture, which I think you guys saw before. You can do custom floor textures. You can make your own tiles for this, and as long as it's tileable, it'll do it the way it's supposed to. But I also have now the ability to do a wall color. And in this case, that means that instead of, or wall texture, excuse me. So instead of just this colored line, I can do something else. So for example, in my new magic dungeon, I have at the end a bunch of textures that I've created. And these textures are really meant for 3D canvas and for dungeon draw. So let's say I want the top of my wall to be more of the stone color. If I click OK, and I zoom in here, you can see now I've got like a stone wall, right? Unfortunately, I'm trying to make this change to the default texture, so it's going to go away after a while unless I save this as a new one. But I've actually got some custom themes already made. Next thing I want to show you is these fields, and I believe these go away if you turn off the 3D canvas integration, but this is where you can apply door textures and wall textures. So if I go back to that link, actually let me go back to my dungeon draw, or my magic dungeon link. And towards the end there, I've got these custom textures. So like, for example, I've got this ornate wall texture. Maybe I want to use that. And oops, I need that on my door. Let's say for this dungeon, I'm going to use this wooden door with the arched top. I have a metal door also, for example. And then for my 3D wall texture, maybe this is where I want to use my ornate, what I call ornate texture. I've got one that's just regular sort of plain stone. And I'll hit OK. And what happens now is when I switch to the 3D view, you can see some of these textures now loaded. Here's that ornate wall, right? Kind of a dungeon, sort of a general purpose dungeon wall. And then if I look at this door, you can see I've got my door now has its own texture. If I click on that, I can open the door and close the door. So here's another door with that texture. This door I drew too wide. That's why it looks a little bit stretched. I can go fix that later. But this is how you can start to create this sort of 3D effect. We're going to go back to this in a second once we do a couple of things. So if we go back into Dungeon Draw, go back into the config, I've taken this default theme and I've done some adjustments to it, but now I have these two tabs here. I've got themes and theme painter. So if I go to themes, here's all the themes that come with Dungeon Draw, right? And these are great. You can use these all day long, but you can also make your own custom themes. And so I've actually created assets that give me some custom themes. And my main theme here is called Stone. And then I've got some supporting themes, which I'll show you guys here in a little bit, how I can make changes and then how I would end up using these and building dungeons with these. So if I go into the stone, first of all, just kind of look through the options here. I can edit this theme. I can copy it, essentially make a duplicate and then make changes to the duplicate, or I can delete this theme. And then I can save a new custom theme, right? So if I go into edit my stone theme, I can see all of the defaults that I chose for that. You can see I chose like a wider interior shadow. I've got a wider wall thickness. I've got all of my textures already preset. And so here's my floor texture. So I'm feeling pretty good about my stone defaults, and I'll probably end up using that here in a second. But again, it's really easy to just copy, save, create new ones. And I've been doing a lot of these, as you can see. I'll probably end up doing a lot more. Once you've got those built, even if it's just got one built and you want to use Theme Painter, you have to come in here and you have to define the theme that you want to use. So you can use any of the defaults or any of your custom ones that will rise to the top. Another thing I'll point out just before I move on is if I want my default theme, right now I've got this cobblestone, but let's say I want my default theme to be stone. If I just come in here and click on this, it'll change it. So you can see my theme here is stone. Now, one thing I have to do is I have to come back in here and I have to get my wall texture back. I think this will probably be fixed soon, but just pick my wall texture. Okay, now I've got this nice sort of base stone themed dungeon, right? Now, if I come back in here and I say, look, I want to paint a fiery room. That's what I want to paint. So I'll have my fire selected, come here to my painter, and I'll say, I want this room to be, full of fire. Now, the way that the painter works is you end up drawing a polygon around the area that you want to paint. So here I've just changed everything to this fire theme. And you guys don't see it on this screen yet, but I'm going to grab this. It's a special light. And when we turn the lights down, it'll actually animate this lava in a cool way. But here I've just essentially painted this room. Now maybe I don't want to paint an entire room, right? So I'll go back to Dungeon Draw. I've got my painter. And maybe I just want this sort of middle area to have fire or whatever that, maybe just that floor is that I've got. And so I just complete my polygon, and now just my floor has changed because I don't have any walls that have collided with this area. So it can also, it's smart enough just to change, portions of what you've got. Now, maybe I want one of my rooms though to be a poison room. Let's draw this, and maybe I want just the edge of that room to still be cobble. And there, now I've got this, area of poison that I have to traverse with something on the other end. That's going to be a nice prize. I'm going to copy my light over, and I'm going to give it a green color. That looks pretty good. I'm going to make it really bright and crazy. This one I brighten up just a little bit. And if I turn my lights down, and I'll throw a test actor in here. That is a really cool room and a cool effect that I can put other things in. I can drop tiles in there. I can drop prefabs in there. And, here I am just running through. I don't have any lights or anything with the rest of my my dungeon. Was just showing you how easy it is to put this stuff together. Here I'm in this really odd room. I love that I can draw this on the fly. And I walk into my poison room and I've got something else crazy and awesome happening in there. So that's the essentials of how you work with this. If you want to create your own custom themes, there's some specs that you'll want to keep in mind. For most of your textures, like your floor texture, if you make it a square texture at 100 DPI, then it'll work with that well. It'll be the size you expect it to be, the scale you expect it to be. So I have a special texture here that's specifically 100 DPI. It happens to be the same texture I'm using in my other Magic Dungeon components. And I'll show you why that's super powerful here in a second. Your wall textures also should be square. You can, if you get a hold of my textures, you can see how I built them. But generally speaking, if you're staying with 100 DPI and square textures, you're good to go. Your doors, on the other hand, should be 2 by 1, or actually 1 by 2. So 1 wide, 2 tall. So think of it in terms of squares, stick with 100 DPI, but it should be 1 square wide and 2 squares tall when you actually look at the tile there. And then the wall texture also currently is square. I've heard that you get performance issues with very small tiles. So maybe stick with 300 by 300 for your textures in general. That's 100 DPI, but it's 3 squares in each direction. So once you make those assets, you can just put them, in your asset folders. Here's a bunch of assets with my Magic Dungeon, and I just name them at the end, all starting with Z, so that all of my textures will go to the end. So here's my different walls, my doors, a metal door, that kind of thing. The last thing I'm going to show you with this particular thing is we're going to look at 3 dimensions, and we're going to jump into 3D canvas. So we're just going to turn on 3D. Now, of course, this looks cool. We can navigate around this with our players and explore this dungeon, but we don't have a floor yet. And so how can we solve that? Well, we've actually got a solution for that here. If we go down to this tool, Save to Scene Background, and we press it, this may not look like anything happened, but if we go into our config, we can see that it's now calling out this picture. And if we go to that picture, you can see I have some other ones saved. It's saved the entire image as a background. And that's pretty cool if you want to go 3D. So let's go look at our 3D view again. Now you can see we've got all of our backgrounds included. So this is a pretty quick and easy way to build a 3D dungeon that I find very impressive. It's not a lot of effort. There's free or very inexpensive resources to do this if you want to do this yourself. And this is really cool. So what else can we do with 3D? Well, Ripper actually has put together a modular compendium with a bunch of stuff in it, a bunch of assets. In this case, I've got some of these assets here kind of ready to load. So I've got this asset hanging out over in the corner here. It's a token. And when I click into that token, I have my 3D tab, and it points to a set of these 3D props. So let's go back into our 3D view and see what we got. Well, that's pretty cool. We've got a barrel. And these kind of props are available all around the internet for free. You can go to Ripper for a bunch of these things, but here's just a really easy 3D prop that we can drop in there. So let's go out of 3D and let's see what other kinds of props we can build. So I'm just going to copy this token. I'll go back to my 3D, back to my props. Obviously, you can't see what these things look like, but let's pick this chest of gold. Go back into 3D, and there we've got a chest. And we can grab the chest here, we can rotate it around, we can stick it in the corner. You notice this little map up here in the corner can be helpful if you want to move things around that way. But there's other things that you can do. So like, for example, we can, instead of a chest, maybe we want this to be, I believe there's like a wall torch, for example. Let's grab this wall torch and let's actually put this wall torch about 5 feet off the ground. Oops, now we can do it. And if we go back to 3D view, you can see that wall torch now is kind of pegged to the wall, right? And if we don't select it, then there you go. So let's take this, maybe not the 3D piece, but let's take what is available to us now and let's try to level this up even more. Okay, so this is a scene I've started to build with some modular components. We're going to bring this together with Dungeon Draw. Just to start though, I'm going to look up all my Magic Dungeon stuff and I'm going to start grabbing some assets. So I like, let's see. So let's just start building stuff. Grab this. And I think what I want to do is build like a really big space. Maybe this is a place for a, like a boss. So I'll explain what I'm doing here. I'm dragging out these basic tiles, and each tile has also lights attached to it. So I can turn these lights on really easily or off if I don't want them. And let's see, in the middle, I think I'm going to use, let's use just an empty one here. Another one. I'll put some of these holes in. And if you guys saw or were paying attention when I showed you my custom things that I had, you'll see how those come into play here. Maybe we'll use this kind of distressed sort of thing here. And in the middle, let's play around with some stuff. Grab my file path and go to my file picker. And let's see, maybe I want, yeah, I want to do some kind of elevation thing here. So let's set this to like 200. Make sure that's at the right Z value or it'll get caught under everything else. Okay, what's going to happen here in the middle, you're wondering? Well, I'm going to drag this chain platform in here. And I want to get it to about the center. And what I like about this chain platform, if I go to tool is I can extend these chains, and I have to turn on quick edit mode. I can extend these chains and put them anywhere. I can put them kind of at any orientation, and this little receiving end also rotates. And I can change out this platform in the middle. I can make it something else. I can put a tower in there, like whatever I feel like. And I just want to put these kind of anchored somewhere that makes sense. Otherwise, I think I'll keep it the way it's at. And then maybe I want like an altar to be in the middle here. Oops. Turn off quick edit mode. Actually turn off quick edit mode. And I've got this really cool altar in the middle. I want to turn on some of my lights because I want this to be, for now, a red dungeon. I'll show you how we can change that here in a sec. We'll go with that light there. All right, looks good. Now, maybe we want to add a couple more things. I kind of like when there's some overhead things going on, and I'll show you some other ones that I've already done. Let's use this arch. This is actually set up as an overhead tile, so when your players are navigating the space, they've got some things above them and below them, which I think kind of makes a cool effect. And I think I want to just play with some elevation here. So let's set this to 150, which is the standard. Oops. Make sure that we can see these tiles. Okay, that feels like a pretty good layer. I'm gonna copy some of these lights over. Okay, now let's see how we bring this together with Dungeon Draw, right? So these are all sort of independent elements, but we want to bring them together. Okay, let's start drawing and see how we do there. There we go. Now we've got our stone theme active. Got snap to grid on. I decided in this room here, I wanted to have this like drop, and then there's this, and you guys will see how this comes together when we start running through it with the new thing. But I wanted these different heads in here, which, you know, you can change these, but there's going to be like a puzzle in this room. And these heads are set up to be able to kind of rotate them out. So here's a dragon head and that sort of thing. Let's build this. Since I've got the same texture as my background, I can draw these in a way that leverages that, if that makes any sense. And so my player is going to enter the dungeon from here, come through here, and then this staircase is actually going to be hidden. So it's currently hidden, as you can see. But once they solve the puzzle, I will unhide it, and then my players can walk down here and over. Once they enter that, I want to have them teleport. So I'll pull in a teleport tab. Actually, you know what? I think I can just, oh yeah, let's do that. So they'll hit this, we'll hide it, and then we'll have them teleport. We'll keep this one simple. There you go, I had to activate it first. Teleport the entity that triggered it, and we'll select our coordinates of over here. Snap to grid. Should be good. Update. And then we'll create its twin over here. Activate it. This was just updated for V9, so it looks like there's maybe a bug there. I had to close it out and then come back in, and now I can manipulate it. Teleport triggering token. This time we're going to teleport them back to here, back to that tile. Snap to grid, should be good. Update that. We'll see if we got that right here in just a second. Now we want to keep drawing our dungeon. Come over here. Surround this. We're just doing cobble right now or stone. You'll see us change this here in a second. Maybe I want this room to be a little bit bigger, maybe even particularly around this kind of midsection here in case I want some battling or something going on. I'll draw that to extend my room boundaries out a little bit. You can make as many alcoves as you want. I just find that fascinating. Like I can just create an alcove right here. Now I've got, more space to work with, more interesting things to do. I get to the end of this room and then I find myself coming over to this room. This one I want to draw just a discrete square around. You'll see why here in a second. And I want an egress point, let's say right here. And maybe I want some doors in this place. So we'll draw a door here. And make this a little bit more mysterious. Draw a door there. Okay. And they get into this room, and then they ultimately will find their way into this room here. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to draw a discrete box around this whole thing. And we'll create some kind of egress. So do something like this. Maybe I'll make this one a little bit wider. Perfect. And we'll throw a door in here as well. Just throw a door right in there. Okay, so now we've got our basic dungeon with our default stuff here, but we want like fire and things to be underneath these pieces here. So let's go into our painter. Let's make sure that we have fire chosen. We'll start with that. And we've got our painter selected. So let's repaint this whole area. Oops, it draws a polygon, which I forgot about. Because I use tiles and prefabs for these top pieces, they won't change, but you can see the background underneath them changed. And we've got this really cool now effect. I'm going to grab some of this fire over here. I'm just going to paste these down. And, I want to block some of this lighting in an interesting way. So I'm going to use my wall tool. If you guys are not familiar with Foundry version 9, these are some new options. Light, I want to restrict. Nothing else do I want to restrict. I even want players to be able to pass through it. I'm going to clone this wall. Hold down Control and just go around here. That's going to restrict my lighting here now to this kind of centerpiece. So I've got some interesting lava effects coming through here. I've got some interesting lava effects here. Let's go back to our painter. Awesome. So now we have this room where we can, clamber across this chain. We've got a couple of things that we can try to navigate in the middle, but for the most part, we've got now flames where we want it. And then we'll do the same thing here. I'm not going to paint, I don't want to paint the whole thing. I'm just going to paint this middle area here. Here we've got this nice fire effect happening there. I may have to refresh the scene to get these walls to engage properly. And then we'll do our last one. There, and now we've got our lava here at the end of this drop. We'll refresh this scene. Now let's drop our lights down. Let's see how our new dungeon looks and feels to a player. Okay, so I've entered my dungeon from my staircase. Of course, the players won't see any of these things around here. So I've noticed right off the bat that I don't have my walls completed here. So let's fix that. If I do my walls here, you can see that I haven't really connected these up the right way. So I probably just have to draw a little bit further in. So let's do that. There we go. Now our light is coming through properly. Same there. Perfect. All these control tokens I can move out of the way once I'm happy with everything. And so now I'm walking through this sort of drop area. I can do some interesting things with all of these statues. When I finally solve things as the GM, I can expose the staircase and my players can walk down into it. They can immediately teleport over to this new area. I'm seeing already I want to correct this light here. The way I want to do this is I just want to actually block this light. And we'll just do that same wall right here. Perfect. Okay, so I get into this room. I've got this interesting red glow. I can come up here and kind of survey what's going on. I've got these arches that are coming off of here. What this is really meant to be is, if you want to use it this way, is a portal. So maybe I have an enemy spawn or multiple enemies spawning out of that portal, and then I got to kind of take care of them, right? But I can, walk on this grating, which is, accessible. And then if I come down here, I can see some more of this kind of overhead effect. And it's just to show you what's available with the Magic Dungeon to be able to create more three-dimensionality in your maps. Finally come into this room and I'm met by this, huge expanse of lava and all the fun things I can do here, all the different rolls to make my way across. But eventually I exit out my lava room. I can do some more creative uses of walls to sort of contain some of that lighting effect if I care. And when I get into my big boss room, I've got now a huge area to play with as far as how I'm going to tactically approach, this altar in the middle and whatever I've deployed there. But you can see this fire effect just looks great. The lighting in general with this version 9 is awesome, but the speed at which I was able to put this together and the flexibility that I've got now, that Dungeon Draw is a thing, is really, really incredible. Now, this is not built to be used in 3D. So if I go into 3D, you can see, and I haven't even used the tiles and other features yet. I've got, walls and things like that. So this wouldn't be a dungeon that you would navigate in 3D. This would be one that you do in more of the traditional 2D way. But this stuff is now possible. And I can now make any dungeon or shape of thing that I want to. And it really came with Dungeon Draw. I could, rather than even just using my prefabs, I can just make a room with multiple hallways. I can pull in things from my castle and, I can have jail cells and things like that. And, I can even change the motif here to whatever I want. So if I go back to my painter and I say, look, I want poison instead of fire. And I want it in, in this room right here specifically. Then all I have to do is just change my lights. Let's give them some kind of green color. Like that. Show you a little trick here. I select all of my lights. Let me make sure my quick edit mode's on. Select all of my lights and then use this little macro that I've got. Then I can change all those lights to green pretty easily. And now I've got an entire room that is a poison motif, whereas the rest of my dungeon might be fire, or I can change it all to poison really, really easily. So thanks, Mcglintlock, for an awesome module. I think that we're all going to have a lot of fun with this. You've obviously been active in your development. And so I'm looking forward to what you come up with next and to keep taking the system forward because there's nothing like easy setup, and you've really kind of got the guts of that for us here. So let me know in the comments, guys, how you end up using this, if you have any other ideas for features and things like that. And otherwise, in the meantime, have fun making your maps.